All right, let's dive right in. We're going to be talking about one of the most amazing, and let's be real, sometimes one of the most confusing parts of sake, the aroma. We're going to unpack that whole world of scent and give you a simple, straightforward guide to understanding what's in your glass.
But let me ask you this first. Have you ever had that moment? You swirl your glass, you take a big sniff, and you're thinking, okay, I smell something, but what on earth is it? If that's you, trust me, you are not alone. Trying to put a smell into words is tough for just about everyone.
And this quote, this just nails it, right? It's from someone learning about sake, and it's so relatable. You know instantly if you like a smell or not, but trying to explain why, that's the hard part. Well, that's the exact problem we're going to tackle today. So yeah, let's just give this a name. We'll call it the Aroma Challenge. It's that feeling when you're grasping for words and saying something is just fruity or earthy doesn't really cut it. It feels like you're missing something.
So what's the solution? Here's the good news. You do not need to memorize a dictionary of 100 different smelling terms. No way. The real key is to learn a simple, structured framework that does the heavy lifting for you.
And that brings us right to the heart of this whole thing, a framework for scent. Think of it like a cheat sheet or a map that breaks down all those crazy, complex sake aromas into a few simple, easy-to-understand groups. And what's the magic number for this framework? It's just 7. Seriously, that's it. Just 7 core categories that will help you pinpoint and describe pretty much any aroma you're ever going to find in a glass of sake. And here they are. These are our 7 building blocks. We've got fruits, plants, rice-oriented smells, something we'll call milkiness, mushrooms, spices and nuts, and then a final catch-all, oxidation and others. Now, let's break them down.
We're going to start with the ones you're probably most familiar with, the really bright, vibrant aromas that just jump out of the glass. We're talking about fruits and plants.
Now, you're going to hear the word ginjo thrown around a lot here. Officially, it's a category of premium sake, but really it's also become shorthand for this whole aromatic style, one that's just bursting with those amazing fruity and floral notes that come from using special yeasts and brewing techniques. Okay, this is so cool. Check this out. Fruity isn't just one smell. It's actually a whole spectrum, and it's created by the balance of just 2 chemical compounds. So if one compound, isoamyl acetate, is dominant, you get things like ripe banana or melon. When they're in balance, you get that classic apple and peach ginjo smell. And if the other one, ethyl caproate, takes the lead, boom, you're in tropical territory with pineapple and strawberries. It's like a sliding scale of fruitiness.
And plant aromas work in a really similar way. They kind of fall into 2 big buckets. You've got your green notes, fresh herbal things like green leaves or pine, which you'll find a lot in those fortified ginjo sakes. And then you have the brown notes, earthier, dried stuff like black tea or fallen leaves, which show up more often in junmai styles. Okay, let's move on to the foundational aromas, the ones that really remind you what sake is all about at its core. We're talking about rice and milk.
I mean, sake is made from rice, so of course it's going to smell like rice. But it's usually a very soft, mellow kind of scent. Think steamed rice, or maybe rice flour. It's often this gentle background note that lets the fruitier aromas shine. And sometimes, thanks to the special koji mold they use, you can even get this lovely, nutty, almost chestnut-like smell.
So wait, milky aromas? Where does that come from?
Well, it usually comes from these really traditional brewing methods called kimoto and yamahai. The super short version is that these methods encourage natural lactic acid, the same stuff in yogurt and cheese, to develop. And that gives the final sake this really unique, rich, and sometimes dairy-like character. And just like with the fruits, this milkiness is also a spectrum. On one end, you might have a modern kimoto sake with these light, fresh notes of yogurt or maybe sour cream. But on the other end, a more traditional, old-school style can have these incredibly rich aromas of butter or even cream cheese.
It's pretty amazing.
All right, now we're getting into the deep cuts, the more savory, complex, and earthy aromas, the ones that talk about umami, about aging, and about the passage of time. This earthy category is really a trio of things. First, you've got mushrooms, which is a big sign of umami, and you'll find that in aged sakes or special autumn releases. Then you can find these subtle spice notes like cinnamon or an ice. And finally, nuts. We already mentioned chestnut from koji, but you can even find notes of coconut sometimes. A really important term here is koloshu, which basically just means aged sake. See, when sake is aged on purpose, it goes through all these chemical reactions that create these super deep, savory, and complex aromas. And that brings us to our last and maybe most controversial category. Okay, this is so important. Oxidation is a total double-edged sword. When it's intentional, like in an aged koshu, it's a good thing. It creates these wonderful, complex smells of caramel, soy sauce, even chocolate. But when a bottle just gets old or is stored improperly, it oxidizes in a bad way. That creates an off flavor that's called hinega, and it's considered a flaw. So you see, it really is all about intent.
Whew, okay. We've gone through all 7 of our core categories. But the real magic, the fun part, is when they all start to combine. So how do we put all these pieces together?
Think of it like you're building a chord on a piano. You start with your bass note. Let's say it's that soft, mellow rice aroma. Then you add another layer on top, maybe that caramel note from some aging. And then you add a little accent, a high note of cinnamon spice. Suddenly, you're not smelling 3 separate things anymore. They've blended together to create a brand new impression, something rich and complex, like raisins or dark chocolate.
And that's the beauty of this whole system. The number of possible combinations is, well, pretty much infinite. But you don't have to worry about that, because you now have the map. These 7 categories are your guide, your tool for navigating any aroma, no matter how complicated it seems at first sniff.
So you're not flying blind anymore. You have the framework, you have the categories, you have the map to sake's aroma. So the only real question left is, what story is your next glass going to tell you?